Hello and welcome back to another SCHEIDT podcast on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Thanks for joining in today. Of course, we're here to run the rule over the weekend's Scottish Premiership action. Of course, here to provide their wisdom and knowledge is Mark McDougall and Blair Meikle. Chaps, you all right?
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. Yourself?
Nice one. Okay, we'll go straight to Rugby Park then. Yesterday, a 4-1 victory for Celtic, of course. Dougs, I'll come to you first. I mean, quite simply, the Hoops just kind of blew Kilmarnock away in that first half, really. Obviously, it was sort of 0-0 in the second half. I mean, that was more than enough to get them to 3 points. I've got some stats here for Celtic. That's 30 wins now from 32 games in the league and over 100 league goals now this season for Ange Postecoglou's men. That really is just an astounding show of consistency, I suppose, and just dominance across the season, isn't it, Dougs?
Yeah, that's it. You really can't take anything away from them on that front. They've been brilliant from day one this season against everybody they come up against. Also, they had that St Mirren game where they lost, but apart from that, there's not really anything that you can look at and say that they got lucky or anything like that. They've been pretty dominant in every game. I think you just need to look at yesterday. The game was over after 25 minutes and they could take the foot off the gas and just relax, probably even before that. But yeah, it was another day where they just keep flying out the traps, and that's what they're doing. If Celtic scored in the first 5 minutes against you, then you've not got much chance of getting back into it. I think when that happens, your game plan goes right out the window and they score another couple and that's it. I think it's been fairly obvious all season that's the case for them. And then when they get to 60 minutes and they can bring on guys like Turnbull and obviously Haxman started yesterday, but quite a lot of time he's coming off the bench, Leo Labada, players like that. I mean, it's just the strength and depth that they have, just unbelievable. And then obviously they missed a penalty again yesterday as well, which is even worse for Kilmarnock in that first half. But yeah, I mean, can't really say much about them other than they thoroughly deserved it.
Yeah, just on Killie, Blair, I mean, they were kind of the makers of their own downfall. I think the first 2 goals, Fraser Murray was to blame for a slack back pass, and then the second goal, he didn't get really tight to the winger who crossed it in for the second goal. But I mean, you don't expect Killie to obviously win these sort of games, not even draw against Celtic, the form that they're in. But as Doug says, I mean, conceding 4 goals within the first 27 minutes, I think it was, in the game, it really did feel like they were sort of beat before they came onto the pitch. And it's probably the case for a lot of teams in the Premiership this season. Celtic are just in ridiculous form. And, it's maybe hard to have that sort of belief that you're going to get anything from the game when you're playing Celtic, with the form that they're in.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing we can say for definite is that Celtic don't need you to gift them goals. So if you're going to go and gift them goals, then there's a good chance you're going to be on the wrong end of a spectacular scoreline. And it looked for a while like it was going to be more than it turned out to be. Obviously, just took their foot off the gas in the second half. But like you say, the first goal after I think it was 5-6 minutes is an absolute gift, and then the next 2 are too easy for Celtic. They just sort of walk through them, and then the fourth one's a gift again from Fraser Murray, who didn't have a great day at all. And Celtic just obviously ruthless as they are, just took advantage of it and could have been a lot more as well.
Yeah, I'll stick with you, because obviously Celtic made a few sort of big changes. Jota and Carter Vickers obviously sort of being rested yesterday, clearly with sort of one eye on the semi-final that's to come against Rangers in a couple of weeks. But I think Doug's touched on it as well. It just really does show that the immense depth that Celtic have in their squad, and Ange Postecoglou, he's got to take all the credit for that. He's the one that's built that squad, completely turned them around from the depths of when Neil Lennon was at the club, and when Rangers won their 55th title. But it's just ridiculous, the squad that Ange Postecoglou has built and the depth that he has at his disposal.
Yeah, and we've done a piece this morning from the X1 players that weren't playing yesterday, and it's pretty strong. There's an argument that it would win the league itself. It would certainly be in a title race at least. So yeah, as you say, that just shows what other teams are up against when their second string is miles ahead of everyone else as it is. And like you say, when Postecoglou took over, that was one of their main issues was the lack of depth that they had. They obviously still had good players there, like Callum McDougall and everything, but they just had the subs bench and everything was nowhere near as strong. So for him to have been able to get to the level it's at already in such a short space of time, it is only 2 seasons he's been there now. So to be able to advance the squad to such a level that it's at compared to what it was is some achievement.
Yeah, there was one big flashpoint yesterday, Dukes, during the game. O's high boot towards Liam Donnelly's face. What's your verdict on that? I mean, Derek McInnes wasn't very happy after the game. Does he have a case, really?
Nah, I think the referee got it right with a yellow card. It was high and it was probably reckless a wee bit, but I don't think it was really dangerous. I don't think he knew that Donnelly was coming in. So I think it would have been harsh to give a red card. I mean, we've seen them given for similar tackles and stuff like that, but I think a yellow card probably was fair on the day. I mean, he's swinging for the ball, he's going for it, he's got his leg up high, but yeah, I think McInnes was maybe being a wee bit unfair on the ref to say it should have been a red card. I think it's one of those ones again that if the ref gives a red card, it probably wouldn't have got overturned. But I think it should have been a red card.
Yeah, I think that's what Dermot Gallagher was saying, Blair, this morning on Sky Sports. You know, as Duke says, it was reckless, and that's probably just a yellow card. It wasn't a dangerous tackle, really, that merited a red.
Yeah, no, I don't think it should be a red. You can have sympathy with McInnes. Obviously, the point that he was making was that the Kyle Vassell one against Hibs early in the season was essentially the same, and VAR checked that and still gave it as a red.
Yeah.
So you can totally see where he's coming from in that respect. But just in isolation, the tackle itself is it's not one you want to see given as a red card. Otherwise, it'd be dished out all the time.
Yeah, without a doubt. Okay, we'll go to the Edinburgh Derby now. Hibs, of course, getting a big victory over Hearts at Easter Road. Very difficult, sort of high pressure game for Stephen Naismith to walk into. Obviously, his first game in charge after Robbie Nielsen's sacking. But Blair, you have to say over the piece, you know, I was there obviously Easter Road on Saturday. You know, Hibs probably did deserve the victory. It was a slender one, but they did deserve the victory thanks to a really good Kevin Nisbet strike as well. Hearts were really not at it at all. But Hibs thoroughly deserved the victory, I thought. Yeah,
definitely, absolutely. Hibs were the winners. First half, I didn't think Hearts were too bad. I thought they were in the game at least. While not being brilliant, they had a couple of chances. Alan Forrest could have done better with a chance. Halliday had a header.
Yeah.
But Hibs, I would say, edged it in the first half without being streets ahead. They probably couldn't complain at being level at that point. But then second half, Hibs stepped it up and were really causing Hearts all sorts of problems with their sort of quite direct play. The Hearts centre backs just couldn't really cope with it, and Nisbet could have scored a few more. Eli Yuan had some good chances,
and
they were really quite impressive just the way they set about. So I think they could sense a vulnerability within Hearts, and that's what they played on. And it probably could have been 2 or 3-0 by the end.
Yeah, I was going to say that they had a lot of chances, clear-cut chances as well. A couple of saves had to be made from Xander Clark, but they were a wee bit wasteful as well, maybe not hitting the target when they should have, but they got the win anyway. We'll go to Hearts in a minute. Dukes on Hibs just now. I suppose the main takeaway from this game for Hibs was the pressure that's now off Lee Johnson's shoulders after the win. You know, big win over their city rivals. He needed it. It's his first over Hearts, and it's Hibs' first thing since December 2019, and so that's more than 3 years, which is incredible. On Hibs, I mean, it's maybe unlikely that they're going to get third now. There is a big gap now between them and Aberdeen. But I suppose if they had any designs of getting there still, they had to win on Saturday, and they did. And even finishing above Hearts, they had to go probably win on Saturday, and they done that as well. They passed that test. So the pressure's really off sort of Lee Johnson now, I suppose. Yeah,
he seems to be able to do this. Like, you see it earlier in the season as well. He was under a lot of pressure then they come up against Aberdeen. And what was it, 5-0, they won 6-0.
Yeah.
When Jim Goodwin gets sacked, and then all of a sudden the pressure's off him. They go on a wee run. I think it was 4 games they won after that. And then obviously they went on a bad run again. So it's kind of summed up a lot of Hibs' season where at times they've played some really good stuff. They've looked good. But then other times they just, I don't know what it is about them. They just seem to lose the games you expect them to win. There's been a lot of times this season where they just seem to flop at places that they really shouldn't. even like looking back to earlier in the season when St Johnstone beat them 2-1. Well, there was a few other games that just they should win. Even Dundee United last week, they shouldn't have been losing that game to Dundee United, but they just didn't turn up. And then all of a sudden they come up against Hearts, who notoriously have to turn up against Hearts and always get beat. Even if they're playing well, it felt like Hearts just always got the win. But now that just was the complete opposite. They turned up. They were excellent on Saturday, I thought, especially second half. I thought first half it was a terrible game of football, but second half I thought they were a lot better. And the biggest thing I can say about them is that I don't remember Hearts ever getting bullied like that in an Edinburgh derby before Saturday.
Right.
Also, like over the years, what you always got was Hearts at least had the fight about them. They were always in their faces, but this time they just didn't have it. It was just, I just felt like Hibs wanted it more, which is a strange thing to say, but it felt like it anyway.
Yeah. Back to Hearts, Blair. You got to say that they're probably at the lowest point in the season just now. You know, it's all sort of been gradually crumbling apart really for, you know, maybe the last month or so. You know, results have been terrible, form horrific. They obviously sacked Robbie Neilson last week. I suppose it's a very general question for you, but I mean, where exactly did they go from here? I mean, short term and long term as well.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of long term, I think they just need to sort of get to the summer and make a decision on what they want to do next. Obviously, that you'll use that time in between to possibly speak to managers or whatever. But short term, it's really difficult. It's hard to put a finger on what they can do to sort things out. Obviously, people, I think fans had seen the Barry Robson thing at Aberdeen and thought, oh, that's what happened. That's just what happens when you sack your manager and put somebody into them. People seem to think it was like 100% given that Naismith would come in and have an impact, where it was like, look, it's 50-50. You don't know.
No.
And on the basis of Saturday, that's not happened. Obviously, there's still 6 games or whatever that you can go and do that. But nothing seemed to be too different. The player didn't seem up for it. It was the same sort of, still the same problem. Maybe a slightly better performance, but it was still the same issues in terms of just not looking like doing anything going forward. Weak at the back, no cohesiveness to their play. Just sort of knocking it about in defence and midfield, but not looking to do anything going forward. Yeah. So I just don't see where that sort of change is going to come for the rest of the season. Obviously, they've got Ross County at home on Saturday, which is a game that they should win. So if they go and do that, then you maybe pick up momentum. But just in terms of the performance, there was nothing there that suggested it's going to go in the right direction. But we'll just have to obviously wait and see.
Yeah, we will indeed. Right, we'll go to Ibrox now. A thriller: Rangers 5, St Mirren 2 in the end up. Dukes, you watched this game on Saturday. Rangers were given quite a stern test, by St Mirren, up until the 80th minute when they finally sort of steamrolled ahead and got the goals that got them the win. But yeah, I mean, ultimately at home, Rangers' quality shone through in the end. But what sort of stood out from you from a Rangers point of view?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird because, it was 2-2, but I think for a lot of the game, Rangers were on top. They deserved to win by a couple of goals. Both St Mirren's goals came from a couple of absolute howlers from Rangers in defence, and that's probably the biggest thing, the biggest concern that Rangers fans will have about it is that they keep leaking these goals. Both Mark O'Hara's goals were absolutely brilliant, especially the first half of the goal of the season contender, that volley. But again, with just defensive mistakes for both of them, and I think it's a big worry that I said it in my match report on Saturday that I think it's 9 games that Connor Bolton's missed in the league, and Rangers conceded something like 14 or 15 goals. So it's not something that they can really keep going with. And you think, I mean, the second goal, especially, John Suter goes up for it in the air and just completely misses the ball, heads it down to Mark O'Hara, and it's a really good finish, like I said, but just defensively they were poor. But I think something that they'll be impressed about, though, is the fact that Michael Beale made those 3 changes on 70 minutes, and straight away they made an impact, and Rangers went back in front and sort of really battered St Mirren in the last 10 minutes. And it was a brave move as well, because he took off a centre-back at a time when Curtis Main was causing a lot of problems.
Right.
Dropped John Lundstrom back in there just to try and get a bit more control on the ball, and it worked. I think you've seen guys like Scott Arfield and that coming off the bench again and having a bit of an impact. yeah, I think there's a lot to be happy about with that Rangers performance. I don't think it was as bad as some people are making out. But yeah, there's defensively is the main concern. But going forward, they look good again.
Right. Just on St Mirren, Blair, I mean, Stephen Robinson, he's doing a fantastic job this season for St Mirren. I mean, obviously they're well in with a shout at getting top six. And I mean, having the scoreline at 2-2 up until the 80th minute, Ibrox is pretty impressive in itself. But as Duke says, we have to touch on those sort of Mark O'Hara goals. I mean, two absolutely brilliant strikes. Gives St Mirren a chance of getting something in the game. And he's really sort of kingpin in that St Mirren team, that's charging them towards, potentially a top six place. He's been absolutely incredible this season, hasn't he?
Yeah, his goal return has been really good. Obviously, some of them have been penalties, but still has to score them. His record's been really good from penalties, but also from open play as well. He has scored a few, and both like obviously one of the goals in particular on Saturday was brilliant, but they were both really really well taken. He just seems to be so good at arriving in the box at the right time from midfield, getting on the end of things, and obviously good at finishing as well. It's a strange one because he's obviously been around for a while. And always sort of been okay, but now is stepping up to the plate and he's sort of coming into his peak years. So wouldn't be surprised if there was teams sniffing around him, but obviously Stephen Robinson suggested it would take a record fee to take him away. So
yeah,
not sure if anybody would be willing to pay that. In terms of St Mirren in general as well, I don't think anyone should be writing them off for finishing third as it stands. Obviously, There is that gap with Aberdeen, but Aberdeen obviously play Rangers next, so it's definitely catchable. And obviously, I think St Mirren definitely should be looking at fourth at least. But obviously, as I say, I don't think we should write them off for third as well.
Yeah, without that, especially with the form that Hearts are in as well. I mean, and there's plenty of games to go. They're all going to play each other in the split. So yeah, it's interesting. Just before we move on, Dukes, I just want to get quickly your thoughts on sort of news around Ross Wilson over the past sort of week. He's obviously left his sporting director role at Ibrox, and he's pitched up at Nottingham Forest now. Generally, was that the best move for all parties concerned, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think as soon as the fans turned on him, and there was always going to end up being that he needed to leave at some point, and that job coming up was a perfect opportunity for him. It helps everyone. Rangers get a wee bit of money in compensation for him. He gets to go off back to the Premier League, and the fans are happy. So yeah, I think it was a perfect move. I think if you look at his sort of record over the last couple of years, I think fair enough, signings aren't his only job, but it's what fans judge sporting directors on, and they just haven't been good enough over the last couple of seasons. I think when you look at the first team, there's very few players in that team that he signed that weren't there before he came in. Guys like Tavernier, Kent, Morelos, Goldson were all there for years before. It's never really been improved on, despite the amount of signings that have come in. So yeah, do you think it was probably for the best that he moved on? And good luck to them down south. I mean, obviously Nottingham Forest is a big club and all that, but they seem to be quite happy to sack their sporting directors every few months. So he might be able to get a new job in a few months.
Aye, maybe. Okay, we'll go to the Friday night football. Ross County 0, Aberdeen 1, of course. Aberdeen claim another big win in their quest for third spot, of course. I suppose Blair's just remarkable, the job that Barry Robson's doing just now. He's obviously got Duke firing in all cylinders up front. He's tightened things up at the back as well, made them pretty solid. And I mean, going to Dingwall, given Ross County's troubles at the moment, I know obviously they're in a relegation fight, but that is still impressive going up there and getting a victory and a clean sheet as well. They're well in. It's there to lose, I suppose, really in terms of third place. But it's just the job that he's done since he came in is just remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's the sort of game that you might go into. People might think it's the sort of game that they might drop points in, but he just seemed to have got them in a really good habit of winning games. Basically, obviously some weeks they've played well, won reasonably comfortably, but there's other weeks where maybe not played as well. Like there was St Johnstone a couple of weeks ago, they were playing against 10 men and only won 1-0, and people were sort of criticising the performance, but they won the game. And they got up to Ross County, maybe not played brilliantly, but they won the game 1-0, another 3 points to tick off. So they're on really good form, obviously, at the moment. It's whether they're probably not going to keep winning all the way through to the end of the season, so it's whether they can have a setback and then recover from it is going to be important for them. Obviously, they play Rangers next weekend. If they're to lose that, the gap could be 2 points, and then they've lost that momentum. So I think it'll be really important to see if they can recover from any setbacks that they do get and keep it going till the end of the season.
Yeah, but I mean, the race for third place could really go down to the wire at the end of the day, when you describe it like that. Just on Ross County, Dougs, I mean, another damning result. I mean, at this game of the season, every game is important, no matter who you play, really, I suppose. And they find themselves bottom of the table now after the weekend results. Of course, Dundee United's resurgence has played a part in that. I always feel like they've got enough in games to maybe get results. I think you've maybe said that before, Dougs, on here before early in the season. There's only 1 point that separates the three teams now at the bottom. It's just ridiculous. It's just so hard to call who's going to go down automatically, and then obviously the playoff place as well. But just on Ross County, do you think they have enough to finish in that 10 spot, which would be safety in the end of the day?
It's weird because, like I say, every time you watch them, they seem to play well. They always seem to, in the game, they very rarely get a battering from anybody, but they never actually seem to get a result. It's really weird. I think they've got a good manager, obviously, Malcolm Mackay, and they've got some good players in that team, but they just can't seem to buy a win from anywhere. And I think with the fact that Dundee United have had a bit of form, and like I've said on here before as well, that I think Dundee United have a squad that's more than good enough to stay up, and probably should be higher up the table than what they are. So then it's really down to whether Dundee United or whether Ross County and Kilmarnock can sort of get out of that problem that they're in just now. And I just can't see Ross County having enough to get ahead of Dundee United again. I think when everyone starts playing each other in the bottom six in a couple of weeks, it's going to be difficult for them. I think, especially with Dundee United, I think they've got more experience in the likes of Stephen Fletcher, Charlie Mulgrew, things like that to drag them through. Guys like Jamie McGrath can do stuff, whereas I don't think Ross County really have that. Even when you look up front, they've also got likes of Jordan White and Eamon Brophy, but obviously Eamon Brophy's injured again, so it just feels like things are going against them. And it wouldn't surprise me if they dropped out at all.
But we say that there, Dougs. I mean, they lost a star player from last season, Regan Charles Cook, and that was a really big loss for them. He was a sort of talisman last season. So yeah, they maybe haven't replaced him, which was obviously going to be really difficult. But yeah, it's going to be a struggle for them, without a doubt. Just on this game, there was one flashpoint, of course. The red card that Graham Shinney got right at the end of the game. It was just seconds before full time, really. VR sort of intervened in this one. Blair, I'll come to you first. I mean, Aberdeen have appealed it obviously today. What do you think your thoughts are on it?
Yeah, it really seems to have divided opinion, this one. For me, that is the sort of thing that I don't want to see it being a red card. I think the way it is now, the way it's going, the way with VAR and everything, and the decisions that have been given, I think I can see why it is. But for me, he's accidentally caught him in the follow through. I don't think you can say that he's deliberately done it or that it's a leg breaker. You talk about endangering the safety of an opponent. But what do you mean by that? I don't think that's a leg breaking tackle by any means. He's maybe going to have a sore leg afterwards, but when you step onto the football field, you accept that you're going to get bumps and bruises. For me, I can see why it is in the current climate, but I don't want tackles like that to be red cards.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Dukes, what do you think?
I've gone back and forward on it about 10 times since Friday. Watching it live, I didn't think it was a red card, or I thought it was harsh. But again, like Blair says, I could see what it was given. But watching it back, I think he's probably gone in with a bit too much force. He's unlucky. I don't think he means to do it, but I think he's just gone in with a bit too much force, and I can see why then it's been given as a red card. I think we've seen it a few times this season, sort of similar tackles, and even going back to a few years ago, one I remember is Ryan Jack up at Pataudry getting for a similar tackle on Stevie Mace, stuff like that. So I think it's been sort of a red card challenge for a few years now, and I think Shinney probably, not saying he knew what he was doing, but he's probably quite happy to go in with that bit of force and leave a bit alone, because you know what midfielders are like, they like to do stuff like that. I think it was probably a bit of a silly tackle at the time. He didn't really need to do it. I can't see them winning the appeal anyway. I just don't see them overturning it at all.
You
No,
think,
I don't think they'll be successful with it being
right?
pointless.
Okay. You think though with these kind of challenges, the ones where players do go on with force, they do win the ball first, but then they maybe follow through. The fact that VAR's in the game now, that's kind of shining a light on, referees are getting a second view at it. The guys upstairs in VAR, they're having a, 3 or 4 looks at it, slowing it right down, still pictures, and that's probably maybe turning the tide in these sort of decisions. I think that's maybe right, Diggs.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've seen that as sort of a problem down in England as well when it first came in, where stuff was getting slowed right down and it looked a lot worse, and that's always going to be the case. I think got to get to a stage where you're sort of viewing these tackles in full speed and just going with it on that. I think if you slow anything down, it's going to look bad. I think it's the same as sort of like the O tackle. If you slow that right down and you see that his foot is right in his face, then you would think red card. But watching it live, you just don't think it is. You think it's a yellow at most. And I think probably a lot of people would say the same for the SCHEIDT tackle at full speed. But yeah, it's like it's easy to blame VAR for it, but I think the rules of football now are just getting a bit not soft, but like it's a lot easier to pick up a red card for stuff like that now than it would have been maybe even 10 years ago. So I think players kind of need to like take a bit of a hit themselves and realise that they can't fly into tackles like that anymore. It's just it's one of those things you've just got to move with the game and move with the times.
The thing is, like, this is the last point in this, but he probably didn't have to make the challenge either, right at the end of the game. They are only up 1-0, but I think it was, seconds before full time, really, if he didn't make that challenge. So, yeah, maybe a needless one on his part. But yeah, okay, we'll go to Fir Park now. Motherwell 1, Dundee United 2. Maybe one of the more surprising results of the weekend. United grabbing a second win on the bounce, of course, to lift them up to 10th in the table. Blair, Jim Goodwin, he seems to be finally getting a tune out of this, talented squad, as we've said, this talented United squad. And they're hitting form at the right time now. That's 2 wins in the bows, going into the split fixtures very soon. It's exactly what Jim Goodwin would have wanted, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all, for some time now, I think a lot of people have said Dundee United will pick up at some point because of the players that they've got.
Yeah.
But then the longer it went, obviously before Goodwin came in, it didn't look like it was necessarily going to happen. And you get people saying, they're too good to go down. But we've seen, obviously, with the likes of Hearts and Hibs in the past that you're not necessarily too good to go down if you don't start picking up results. Obviously taking them a managerial change to do that. But Goodwin's now, as you say, managing to get a tune out of the players. Stephen Fletcher as well seems to be coming up big for them. He's been probably one of the better players throughout the season, but he's really started to come onto a game now. So he's probably going to be big for them come the end of the season. I think they've now got the momentum at the right time, where I think they will keep up picking points. Maybe not at the rate that they have been winning every week or anything, but I think they will still pick up enough points to get themselves out of it.
Yeah, form is a big thing though going into the split fixture, isn't it? I mean, if you're in that sort of form, then you've got a good chance you're going to be more confident. Just on Motherwell, Dougs, they had a run of 3 wins out of 4 before this one, which is very good, and it took them away from those relegation places, of course, under Stuart Kettlewell. This one was probably a coupon buster for a lot of people on Saturday. Maybe people expecting Motherwell to get a home victory, of course, against bottom of the league United. But of course, Kettlewell will be disappointed with that result. Obviously, a game at home that was winnable. But I mean, he has done on when you step back and look at it, he's done a remarkable job since he came in over the last sort of few weeks. As I said, he steered them away from those danger zones now. And yeah, you probably say that Motherwell are pretty safe now. But he's done a great job, hasn't he?
Yeah, it has. And it was actually a coupon buster for me. It was the only team that let me down, so enough as it was. But he's done a brilliant job there since he's went in. I think you look at he's started to get like a bit of good form out of a lot of players that maybe weren't performing well under Stevie Hamill. Defensively, they seem a lot stronger. I know they brought in a couple of players in January that didn't really seem to get a chance under Hamill when they first came in, and then Kettlewell sort of like has really got them going again. Liam Kelly seems to hit form again. He started to save things. I think early in the season it felt like every shot that went towards Motherwell's goal was a goal, and he wasn't really saving anything. But he started to do well again. And then when you've got Van Veen up front, and you're going to pick up enough points because he's been brilliant this season. I think you look at the goals he's got over the course of the campaign for a team who are in the bottom six who weren't winning that many games, and he's got to get a lot of credit. And I think just getting a bit of support for him has really helped Kettlewell. I think Motherwell comfortably safe, and if they can keep sort of doing the same thing, then next season they'll be challenging for top six again. And I think that's kind of where Motherwell should be and where they want to be over the course of the next year.
Yeah, just on Van Veen, actually, when you say that, I mean, I think actually, when Hamill was really struggling as manager, Van Veen's form sort of dipped a wee bit, despite all the goals that he's got. But I think, Motherwell fans, during that time, I don't know if they're just clouded by their own anger, via sort of Hamill. But they were giving Van Veen quite a lot of stick at that point of the season. The chips were down sort of all over the place. It probably wasn't just his fault at all. But as you say, when Kettlewell's come in, he's turned Van Veen's form around as well, and he's scoring a lot more goals. And that's just so vital for Motherwell. The fact that they're away from those relegation places. But yeah, just before we move on to the last game, there was a couple of penalty decisions in this game, both involving Stephen Fletcher. Very, very similar incidents. The first one was given as a penalty, and it was tucked away, of course, by Jamie McGrath. And the second one, the referee, deemed Fletcher to have dived. Well, actually did look like a penalty as well, to be fair. What do we think on both decisions? I'll come to you, Blair, first.
Yeah, and as you said, they look very similar. To me, I would say they're both fouls, both penalties. Fletcher does seem to make the most of it a wee bit, but
as if he's looking for it a wee bit. Yeah,
but there's still contact there. So as soon as that happens in the box, as soon as the goalie goes down, doesn't necessarily get the ball and touches the player instead, and he goes down, then I would say it's a penalty. But I don't know. Yeah. Would be a referee.
I know.
The strange thing is, I thought the second one was more of a foul than the first one as well. I think the first one sort of 50-50. I could see why it's given, but the second one I thought was a Stonewall penalty, and he books him for diving in that one, and it doesn't get overturned. I just thought it was a really strange decision. I think over the course of the weekend, to be fair to the refs, I think they got most things right.
But
in that game, I don't understand how he came to the decision for those two penalties when they were all, like you say, they were almost identical. I don't understand how one can be a penalty and one's a dive. It just doesn't make any sense. But
yeah, that's it. If you're giving one, then you've got to give them both because it's just exactly the same tackle, basically.
Yeah. Consistency, that's what we're crying out for, isn't it? We just don't get it, don't we? Just don't get it at all. Okay, the last game, Livingston 2, St Johnstone 0. Livy getting back to winning ways, of course, after a wee slump in form under Davy Martindale. But it's another bad loss for St Johnstone, and Dougs ended up costing Callum Davidson obviously his job, and they end up obviously sacked yesterday afternoon. Only 2 years ago, crazily, he won a historic cup double with St Johnstone, and it's just going all a bit pear-shaped for the Perth club recently. Is this did St Johnstone panic here with the sacking yesterday, do you think?
I don't think they did. I think you look at last season when they escaped through the playoffs, and then this season they've been in terrible form again. I think it's something like 2 wins from the last 16 games or something like that. They've not won at home since they beat Rangers in October, November time on the Survivor Brockhurst. So it's a long time since they've won at home. They just aren't winning enough games, and the football's not great either. I think the biggest thing for me is I've never really understood why Callum Davidson stayed after winning the cup double, because at that point you're not getting any better with St Johnstone. You're not in the league, so. And you're probably never going to win a cup double again. So
just go out in a high sort of thing. Yeah,
it's all going downhill from there, and it has. He lost some of his best players that summer. Kind of never really got the money to sort of build it again, and which is natural because St Johnstone don't have that sort of money. And it just never felt like it was going to turn out well for him. And I can't blame them at all. I think you look at St Johnstone fans, and I think you kind of have to take the guys who watch him every week's opinion, and pretty much unanimous that they wanted him out at this point. It was kind of like save his legendary status instead of having him take us down sort of thing as well. So I don't think it was reactionary at all. I think it was probably something that's been coming for a while, and St Johnstone were probably a bit worried to pull the trigger because he is such a club legend, but at the end of the day, he had to do it.
Aye. I suppose, Blair, you were saying earlier on it's maybe had a similar decision to the Aberdeen one when they sacked Goodwin and brought in Robson. Hearts obviously sacking Robbie Nielsen and then hoping for a bounce under Stephen Naismith. It's maybe a similar sort of situation here with St Johnstone where they've sacked Callum Davidson and they're just hoping that a fresh face in the dugout. Obviously, it'll be Steve McLean, I think, who takes interim charge. Just hoping that something different happens on the pitch and they start picking up results. I think that's maybe the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, I think that'll definitely be an element to it. What I would say is that Davidson's probably the one out of the ones that we've mentioned there. Davidson's probably the one that warrants it the most. I think I would agree with Doug, is it's been coming for some time now. Their form basically over the last almost 2 seasons has been pretty dreadful, particularly at home, I think, which that's not going to keep the fans on side if you don't win games at home. So I think the St Johnstone fans have kind of been wanting this for a few weeks now. I think it's easy for people on the side of the club to just look at the fact that he won a cup double a couple of years ago, and they're not in the bottom 2 at the moment. So it's easy for people to say that it seems harsh, but I think you've got to take the views of the people who actually watch them every week as more having more of a clue of what's going on. So, and they've seemed to have been really unhappy with the football they're playing and everything under Davidson. So you have to agree with Doug that it's been coming for some time.
Yeah, without doubt. All right, just a final word on Livingston. Blair, I'll stick with you. It seemed like their sort of top 6 hopes were really sort of fading away. But I mean, they're still in with a shout, I suppose, just now. It obviously goes down to the last game next week. It's going to be difficult for them to pick up a result. I think it's who they play next week. I can't remember who they play next week.
Dundee United, I think.
Dundee United away, yeah, that's right. So I mean, that's going to be a tough game to get a result from, given Dundee United's resurgence. As I say, they're going to have to maybe rely on other results to get into the top 6. But I mean, for a club like Livingston size, I mean, getting to this stage in the season when you're still got a wee chance of getting into the top 6 it's just incredible, really, because they've got the lowest budget in the league. And David Martindale, when you step back and look at the bigger picture, he's done a tremendous job this season, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm a really big fan of Martindale and what he's done at Livingston. I think it probably doesn't get recognised enough. He is the one that's pointed out about how he's got the smallest budget and everything, but that's such a factor to have them competing for the top 6 when I think they are significantly the smallest budget in the league is very good. I think it will be a massive blow for them if they don't do it, because last year as well they were looked on course for the top 6, and then it was a late collapse then, wasn't it, that sort of saw them miss out on the last day. So if they do it again with another late collapse, I think they were sitting at 4th at one point. So
yeah, they were, yeah.
If that happens again, it'll be a total sickener for them. But like you say, even if they do end up finishing 7th, bigger picture, that's still a good achievement for them. But they'll hope not to have a 2 sickeners in a row of missing out. Yeah.
Right. Before we sign off, then let's predict the top 6. So obviously, Celtic are going to be finishing first, of course. It's going to be Rangers next. I want the order of 3rd to 6th. Dougs, I'm starting with you. I'm putting you both on the spot here. It's going to change. It's going to be topsy turvy, isn't it? When the split games come through, they're all playing each other. But who's going to have enough to finish in that 3rd spot, and then who's going to get into the top 6? Just about.
I think Aberdeen will get 3rd.
Right.
And I'm going to say St Mirren are going to get 4th.
Ooh,
Hearts 5th, and Hibs 6th.
Hibs 6th. Okay. Interesting. Blair?
Aberdeen 3rd, St Mirren 4th.
All right.
Livingston 5th, and Hearts 6th.
Hearts 6th and Hibs missing out on a top 6 place.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Interesting. It's going to go down to the wire, I think, as regards to sort of all the places in the top 6. It's going to be really interesting indeed. And as I say as well, the relegation battle as well, it's just so interesting just now. There's only 1 point between the bottom 3 places. It's just going to be a ridiculous end to the cinch Premiership season, and we're all here for it. So yeah, that'll do for today. Thanks very much, Dougs and Blair, for joining me this afternoon. Thanks for everyone watching as well on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter as well. I'm sure we'll be back very soon for another episode. But yeah, thanks guys for today, and thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you all very soon.